Welcome back to another loaf of Teck. Maybe I'll put an intro before this, but probably not. This is Frankens TCG. Hey, how you doing? And we're going to talk a little bit about Group Slug. Yeah, so this is a thing, right? Pretty much the deck can be 1, 2, or 3 colors. It can be red, red-green, or red-green-black, depending on if you want to do the mana burn route with Yurlok. Hello, my name is Yurlok. I like to burn the people. It's a mana burn deck. But instead we're going with Klothys instead. Because, you know, it's our destiny. So, if you've never heard of Group Slug before, you're probably wondering what Group Slug is. It's basically a deck that tries to impede play and just deal damage to absolutely everyone at the table, sometimes meaning yourself as well. It's fine. Don't panic. The way that we do this is with things such as this. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 damage doublers. I know I said doublers, but let's go there, right? So, first up we have Mechanized Warfare. If a red or artifact source that you control would deal damage to an opponent, or opponent the opponent controls, it deals that much damage plus 1. So if you're ticking over Klothys damage for 2, it'll actually do 3. If you're ticking over something else that only does 1 damage, it's going to do 2 damage. That is the point of this particular deck. Note that it's red. It's very specific for this particular card, and I think one of the other doublers as well. Alright, so next up we have Sophoma, Mayhem Dominus. If a source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent, or opponent an opponent controls, it deals double that damage to that player or permanent instead. The whole point here is a source, so it can be a green source, a red source. In the black deck it can be a black source. It's just any source that would deal damage, non-combat damage. If a red source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage plus 2. Good old Thorbrun, because dwarves are cool, man. Furnace of Wrath is another one, enchantment. If a source would deal damage to a creature or player, it deals double that damage to that creature or player instead. Fiery Emancipation. If a source that you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage to that permanent or player instead. Triple. Oh boy. We have our Angrath's Marauders, good old Pirates. If a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. And the last one we have is a City on Fire, which has Convoke, which I think is actually pretty cool. So your creatures can actually help you pay the cost of this spell to try and reduce that massive cost of 8 mana. If a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage instead. So, pretty nice. Got to do it twice, and if you have multiples out, then the entire table is in a lot of trouble. We kind of already spoke about Klothys. So Klothys is 2 modes basically. The first mode is dealing damage by a non-land card at the start of the upkeep, just tinging that out and tinging your opponent, an opponent, not all opponents, or digging out a land from a discard pile and getting an extra red or green, which can help us pay costs. Let's put that up over there for a second. We have Price of Progress. It's kind of, I want to call it maybe sort of like a finisher. I know this shadow is annoying, I'm sorry. So Price of Progress deals 2 damage to each player, including yourself, for each non-basic land they control. Yeah, we need a reprint of that with they, them. That would be great. We're going into damage basically to start off with. So Hadouken deals 3 damage, 3 damage, 4 damage, 5 damage, 6 damage, 9 damage, you know, all the way up to like 18 damage or maybe even more. Yeah, the adding damage and then doing doubles or triples is pretty amazing. Browbeat's an interesting one. So I love it because it's like, hey, I will deal 5 damage to you. Any player basically can pay the 5 life. They can take the 5 damage. If no one does, then you can target yourself and just draw 3 cards. So you're either going to do 5, 10, 15, maybe more damage to somebody. If they decide that they don't want you to draw cards, which is kind of dumb, just let them draw cards. We have Combustible Gearhulk, much in the same vein as well. So when the Gearhulk enters the battlefield, target opponent may have you draw 3 cards. If the player doesn't, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard, and then Combustible Gearhulk deals damage to that player equal to the converted mana cost of those cards. Can be really good. Our deck is probably on an average of 4 mana, so it can be like 4, 8, maybe 0 if we hit all lands or something, but it should be pretty good. Next up, we have a Klothys Fury. So for each player, choose friend or foe. Each friend discards all cards in their hand and then draws that many cards, +1. Or, under foe, deals damage to each foe equal to the number of cards in their hand. So you can potentially just end the game with this. It's, a strong possibility when you have your doublers and triplers on. But, it's good. The same with Chandra's Ignition, 3 colors and 2 red. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. Generally speaking, hopefully Klothys is going to be active and not just a static enchantment. So it's going to be a base of 5, which is pretty good. But we have plenty of other creatures like that will allow us to obviously do that, like Combustible Gearhulk and Inferno Titan and stuff like that. We have Incite Rebellion. For each player, Incite Rebellion deals damage to that player and each creature that player controls equal to the number of creatures they control. Basically just a board wipe. We're not playing the big red one. Oh boy, that deals 13 to the table and is reduced by the amount of creatures. I can't remember the name of it. Doesn't matter. We're actually not playing that. Inferno Titan. Inferno Titan! 4 colors, 2 red for a big old 6/6 giant is always good that you can pump, but whenever Inferno Titan enters the battlefield or attacks, it deals 3 damage divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 targets. So you might just want to just shoot each opponent, really, depending on what's on the board. This one's lovely. Squallmonger. One of the things that people forget about, I think, in a lot of decks, but Squallmonger deals 1 damage to each creature with flying and each player. Any player may play this ability. Can be interesting with doublers that base on source. Yeah, it can be real weird. Then we move into, I guess, more the activated damage, or procced damage, depending on how you want to look at it. We got Harsh Mentor. So whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact or creature or land on the battlefield, if it's not a mana ability, then Harsh Mentor deals 2 damage to that player. Again, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, the sky is the limit. Rug of Smothering. Yeah, this one's interesting because I only just found out about this card. It shows you how long it's been since I played Group Slug. Whenever a player casts a spell, they lose 1 life for each spell they've cast this turn. We have a Rampaging Ferocidon. Players can't gain life, which is actually pretty important in Group Slug to stop people from, basically gaining back life and negating your effects and just basically making you kill yourself. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, Rampaging Ferocidon deals 1 damage to that creature's controller. We've got Cindervines. So whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, Cindervine deals 1 damage to that player. Don't worry about the rest of the text. It's not... I mean, it's a thing, but it's not a thing that we need to worry about most of the time. But, destroying an artifact or enchantment and dealing 2 damage is, not in the realm of what we're looking for, but we probably will. Here's some weird stuff. I don't know if I should keep this in because we do have some anti non-basic land stuff. But yeah, okay. Well, Wrath's Edge. So tap, add a colorless mana. Pretty standard. 4 and tap, sacrifice a land. Wrath's Edge deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Not entirely sold on it, to be honest, especially having to sack a land for it. But can reduce the amount of damage you're taking from other stuff that you have around non-basic lands that we'll get to in just a sec. Everyone's favourite Shivan Gorge. I don't know how many people actually also remember Shivan Gorge as a thing. Tapped out a colourless, 1 red and 2 colourless tap, deals 1 damage to each of your opponents. Now we get into the more fun stuff. We of course have an old staple from Invasion, I want to say, is that symbol. I remember because this was not always a deck in Standard, the Overabundance deck, but I did see it now and again. Overabundance usually came out in sideboards against certain control decks from memory. Whenever a player taps a land for mana, that player then adds, there we go, 1 additional mana to their mana pool of the same type, and Overabundance deals 1 damage. Overabundance was also in a combo deck, a type 1.5 combo deck from memory. Mana Barbs, again, it's another one. So each time any land is tapped for mana, Mana Barbs deals 1 damage to that land's controller. Then we have Burning Earth. There we go. So, whenever a player taps a non-basic land for mana, Burning Earth does 1 damage to that player. I'm actually missing a Citadel of Pain in here, and Citadel of Pain is something like enchantment at the beginning of each player's upkeep. Citadel of Pain deals 1 damage to that opponent for each non-basic land they control. I went through, I'm not going to kid around here, 5 or 10,000 cards over the last 2 days trying to find my Citadel of Pain from the last time I had this deck built 2 or 3 years ago. 3 years ago, actually. And I couldn't find it. It's gone. This makes me very sad. Another tapper deal damage to everyone. So this is a red-green druid that taps for a green, but whenever you tap the Zertar druid, it deals 1 damage to each opponent when you're tapping it for mana. So, especially when you're tapping it for mana. Next in, we've got some land procs. So we have Zozu the Punisher, of course. Whenever land enters the battlefield, Zozu deals 2 damage to that land's controller. Then we have this really pretty Ankh Mishra. I don't know if we've had a reprint of this. I feel like we need to. It's only like a $7 card or something, so it's not really expensive, but it's just, I could imagine this being in Standard and still being good. Ankh does 2 damage to anyone who puts a new land into play. That wording. Impatience is something I had to go out and buy, to be honest, because I didn't have any. I was, I guess, impatient to get my hands on one. Let that joke sink in. Yeah, great. Wait for applause. At the end of each player's turn, if that player didn't play a spell that turn, Impatience deals 2 damage to them. Then we have a Quakebringer, which is a newer card as well. At the beginning of your upkeep, Quakebringer does 2 damage to each opponent. This ability only triggers if Quakebringer is on the battlefield, or if Quakebringer is in your graveyard and you control the giant. So, cool for the giant deck, I guess. Primal Order. During each player's upkeep, Primal Order deals to that player an amount of damage equal to the number of non-basic lands he or she or they control. We have a Sulfuric Vortex. So pretty. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, Sulfuric Vortex deals 2 damage to that player. If a player would gain life, that player gains no life. Then we have Rumbling Slum. Doesn't look like much of a slum, but yeah, okay, sure. At the beginning of your upkeep, Rumbling Slum deals 1 damage to each player. And the card that I want to kill them all with is a Fanatic of Mogus. Now, as you saw, most of the damage dealing, doubling, extra stuff has multiple red pips, which is a great thing for us. So, not unlike our friend Gary, Mogi, that's what I'm going to call him, deals damage to each opponent equal to your devotion to red. So, I mean, Mogi is probably going to deal roughly 5 to 10 damage on its own, hopefully. And then if we've got a doubler, that's, 10 to 20 damage. And then maybe if we have another doubler, I guess it doubles again. I have to look up how that actually works, because I don't actually know how this deck works properly, because I've never really thought about it. But I guess you'd have to stack the triggers, so you'd get a double and then a triple, or a triple and then a double, or whatever. So let's say that it does 10, and then the double would do 20, and then the triple of the 20 would be 60. So, I mean, it's basically just a really solid finisher it should be. But that is Group Slug. I like to call this Klothys Lord Slug. If you're a fan of Dragon Ball Z, you will understand. There's some really weird cards in here, and I'll try and put a deck list down below, because sure, some stuff needs to be fixed. I mean, there's a good amount of ramp in here. There isn't the standard 36 lands. I think there's like 32 lands, because we have a whole bunch of ramp. I mean, we have things like Winter Orb to slow the other decks down, and Smoke to like keep some creatures tapped down, so that, we're not getting overrun. Yeah, it's just one of those decks that I've been trying to figure out kind of how to make it just a little bit different from what we see currently. Just because I get really bored sometimes, and I want to build something new and something different. And with this deck, I kind of went, well, standard old school route with, a little bit of maybe tie down effects to be a little bit unfair. But I also put in a Fires of Invention, and I don't know if this is going to stay in here, but I'm going to give this a try today, actually, and see how it works out. But yeah, so that is the Lord Slug deck. I hope that you're experimenting with other deck types as well. I hope you enjoy your entire week. And I have been Frankens. All the socials are down below. Give us a follow or whatever. Thanks, and bye.